Tonight's terrifying story comes from a viewer who wishes to remain anonymous. We changed the names and locations for their privacy, but this viewer shares that still haunts them to this day. Stay tuned because this story might just keep you up at night. It was the summer of 1996, nearing the fall, and the air was still thick with the warm humidity typical of Missouri's late summer nights. Jake was 21 at the time, and just at that age where curiosity and the boredom of small town life led to the late night adventures with friends. One particular night, while hanging out with his buddy, Mark found two of themselves looking for something, anything to break the monotony of their rural town life. Mark had heard a story from a guy who claimed to know of a strange spot deep out in the woods, a road that supposedly led to something inexplicable, ghosts, spirits, or perhaps something more sinister. The place was called Cooper Hollow Road, located far outside of their hometown of Mapleview, which was barely more than a few blinking streetlights and dusty old buildings. If you drove far enough, some said you could see things on Copper Hollow Road that weren't supposed to be there, phantoms, or even the occasional apparition. After you turned off your headlights and sat still in the dark for long enough, these things would occur. Jake, being both skeptical and intrigued, had no problem entertaining the idea. Anything to get out of town. Really, Mark, however, was fully on board, and soon enough, the two friends were cruising down Highway 27. Jake, being both skeptical and intrigued, had no problem entertaining the idea. Anything to get out of town, really. Mark, however, was fully on board, and soon enough, the two friends were cruising down Highway 27, the summer night air rushing through the windows. From Mapleview, it was about a 20-minute drive, a stretch of rural road so isolated it felt like the end of the world. Past rolling fields and thin, crooked trees, they finally turned off onto Fisher's Lane, a quiet road with few homes and a growing sense of desolation. After a few miles, they made a left onto Stone Creek Drive, a narrow, winding road with towering, dense trees looming on either side. It was dark now, the deep blue sky hanging heavy with the night, stars barely visible between the thick cloud cover. The further they went, the fewer signs of civilization they saw. Only a few scattered lights from old farmhouses far in the distance, far enough that it seemed they were entering a different, forgotten world. At the end of Stone Creek, the road forked sharply into Copper Hollow Road. This was it, the final stretch before the supposed ghost encounters. They'd barely driven down it for a minute when something odd caught their attention. Sitting just off to the side of the road, right in the tall wet grass, was a figure. It wasn't a normal animal, though. The silhouette of a large creature seemed to crouch, its head nearly level with the car. Jake slowed down instinctively, his eyes narrowing as they squinted to make out the shape. They could only see the front half of it clearly, but even that was enough to make Jake's stomach turn. This was no ordinary dog. The creature was massive, unfathomably so. Jake had been around dogs all his life, having grown up in rural Missouri where wild animals weren't an unusual sight. He'd hunted, fished, and seen the local wildlife up close. He knew dogs, coyotes, and even the occasional fox. But this, this was something different. The beast was larger than any mastiff or Great Dane he'd ever seen. It sat low on the ground with its rear end planted, but its front legs stretched out in a way that made it appear much taller than a typical dog. Jake guessed it had to be nearly 3.5 feet tall at the shoulder while sitting. But it was the sheer size, the bulk of it, that was so unnerving. It looked almost like a grotesque hybrid, its body thick and muscular, with the build of a Rottweiler, but far more intimidating, even monstrous. Its coat, however, was the strangest part. A sleek, shimmering black fur that glinted almost silver when the headlights hit it, like a sheen of wet oil. That seems kind of familiar if you've heard me talk about something similar. Jake could feel his pulse quicken, a knot forming in his stomach as he watched the creature. Its face was oddly human like in its intensity, revealing its teeth. Jake felt an icy chill shoot up his spine. They were huge, far too large for any dog. Jagged canines gleamed like daggers under the headlights, bared in a snarl that made it clear this creature, it wasn't friendly at all. But then it was the eyes that truly set it apart. The creature's eyes were glowing, soft, reddish orange. Not like the usual eye shine you get with animals in the wild, but a steady, almost unnatural glow. There was something hauntingly sentient about those eyes, something ancient, dark, and hungry. As they neared it, the creature's posture shifted. It didn't stand, but it somehow seemed more threatening, as if ready to lunge at them. Jake could feel Mark's grip tighten on the door handle beside him. Neither of them spoke, but they were thinking the same thing. This isn't a dog. This isn't natural. What the hell is that? Jake finally whispered, his voice hoarse. That's no dog. That thing looks like a hellhound. It wasn't just the size or the teeth that made it terrifying. It was the way it seemed to wait, watching them as if daring them to come closer. The car crept forward, and just as they thought they would pass it, something strange happened. The creature didn't charge or snap. Instead, it began to fade, slowly, as if its form were dissipating into the night. It didn't vanish, but the edges of its body seemed to blur and melt into the darkness. The glowing eyes lingering for a moment longer before disappearing entirely. Also, something I had an experience with and explained before. So, similarity there, guys. Something to take into consideration when listening to this. Jake slammed his foot on the gas pedal without a word, jerking the car forward. Mark, white knuckled, didn't need any further encouragement. Neither of them looked back until they reached the end of Copper Hollow Road, both of them glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. There were no ghosts at the end of the road that night, no supernatural apparitions. They sat there for a while. The only sounds, the occasional creak of the car and the soft rustling of the wind in the trees. When they turned around to head back, they scanned the road, expecting to see the creature again, but it was gone. By the time they met up with the others, Jake could barely get the words out. We didn't see any ghosts, he muttered, but we saw something else, a hellhound or something, I swear. Years had passed since that night, but the memory of what they saw on Copper Hollow Road has never left Jake. He's never told many people about it either. Who would believe him? Who would take seriously the idea of a massive, glowing eyed creature lurking in the Missouri woods? It was easier to chalk it up to an overactive imagination, but deep down, Jake knew what he saw. And though he and Mark sometimes still drive those roads just to talk and revisit the place, they've never seen that creature again. Some things Jake thought are best left in the dark. What do you think about that experience, guys? I personally believe him. That made the hair on my neck stand up numerous times. Similarities so close to what me and my friend saw in 1987. Give me your opinions, what you think in the comments. And if you guys have a believable, credible, good story to share with Planet 412 and myself, obviously, I promise you I'll get back to you and we'll discuss it.